Hi, it's Steve. Today we're going to show you how to change the heater element on your dryer, and it's a really easy job. All we're going to need is a Phillips screwdriver and a Stubby Phillips screwdriver, and you may also want a pair of needle nose pliers. Let me show you how we do it. Now before we begin this repair, the first thing we'll need to do is to disconnect power to the dryer. So if it has a cord on it, simply unplug it, or if it's a hardwired dryer, locate the fuse or breaker panel and turn the power off there. We'll next want to pull that dryer out far enough that we can access two screws that secure the top to the cabinet. And we'll remove those two screws and then just slide that top back about ½ inch and then lift it off and set it aside. Now our next step will be to remove two screws at the very top that secure the brackets that hold the control panel in place. Then lift the control panel up, tilt it back out of the way, and then we'll remove the two top ones. We'll have to hold that panel up against the cabinet so that it doesn't become dislodged. Now our next step will be to open the door. We're going to remove these two screws just below the lint filter. Then we'll also remove two screws at the very bottom that secure the bottom of the front panel. Next we'll disconnect this 2-wire harness to the door switch, and we'll also remove the single black wire that is attached to the light bulb. And then we can remove the top two screws securing that front panel to the cabinet. And we'll want to support that whole assembly as we do that. Now with all the screws removed, we're next just going to lift up on that front panel to disengage 4 clips that hold it into the cabinet. Then we'll turn it around so that we can access the door catch. Now next we'll need to remove this front bulkhead, and to do so we'll want to either detach that zip tie that holds the wire harness to it, or cut it and replace it. It looks like there's lots of room to remove this one, so we're just going to take a thin flat blade screwdriver and we're going to release that catch and we'll pull it off. We'll next remove that single white wire from the light bulb and then disconnect the 2 harness connectors by first releasing the locking tabs and then pulling them apart. And then we'll set the console aside. Now next we'll remove 2 screws that secure this support bracket from the back to the front, and then just lift the little metal tabs out of the slots. And then we'll remove 2 Phillips screws on the bottom, and then we'll just lift that front bulkhead away from the drum. You may need to just lift up on the drum enough to release it. And then we'll set that aside. Now our next step will be to release the belt tension on the drum. So we're just going to reach in on the right hand side here and then in through the center until we feel both sides of that belt. And you'll feel that it, from the left side, it goes over across the top of an idler pulley and then down onto the pulley on the drive motor. So grasp that idler pulley, pull it to the left, release the tension, slide the belt off the motor pulley. Now at this point we can use that belt to support the weight of the drum. We're just going to lift up on it. It clears the rear drum rollers. And we'll pull the whole drum right out of the dryer. So first we'll remove this single Phillips screw that's located in the rear here. And we'll need a short stubby screwdriver to access that. Well, next we'll remove 2 screws that are at the front of that heater chamber. And then we can just pull that forward to remove it from the outlet at the back. pull it up here enough that we can access the thermostats that are located on the side, as well as the 2 wires to the heater terminals. Okay. Now those are probably on there fairly snug, so use your pliers, grasp the terminal itself, and pull them off. Now if the wire terminals show any signs of discoloration or arcing or corrosion, they will need to be replaced with a high heat type of terminal. Now the thermostat ones, we can just remove the screws for the thermostats. And lastly, the thermal limiter. We can then discard the old heater. We'll then reinstall the thermal limiter and the high limit thermostat to the new housing. Now make sure those screws are tightened securely so that we don't get any vibration or noise. Now before we put the heater chamber back in place, it's a good opportunity to dig out your vacuum cleaner and vacuum up all the lint that's around the motor and the base of the dryer, and as well the outlet for the heater as well. Then carefully lift that heater down into position. We'll reconnect the 2 wires to the element itself. Again, make sure that those are nice and tight and secure. We'll line that heater up with the outlet at the back. We can install the 2 screws at the front of it first. We won't tighten those just yet until we put the rear one in first. Now if you had difficulty removing that screw at the back, you could take one of the screws out of the old element housing, which is a 1/4 inch hex head as well, if it's easier to put a 1/4 inch socket and a ratchet to install that screw. Otherwise, go ahead and put the original back on. And once we have that rear screw installed, we'll tighten up these 2 front ones. And now we can go ahead and put the drum and belt back on. Now when installing the drum, first thing we'll do is we'll loop the belt around it, keeping the groove side of the belt against the face of the drum. Then we're just going to lift it into position. And once we get it to the back, we'll want to make sure that we have it sitting up on top of the drum rollers. And just make sure that it will sit flush and rotate. Now at this point we can go in and reconnect that belt to the idler and motor pulleys. Now when installing the belt, we will have it draped around the drum, and it's actually going to come down and loop around that motor pulley. And it will go across the top of the idler and up either side of the drum. So we'll reach in on the right hand side, grab the belt, make sure that it's still flat against the drum. Same thing through the center. And we're going to pull that belt from the center over across the top of the idler pulley. We'll grasp that idler pulley, put some tension on the spring, and then we'll rotate the belt down onto the motor pulley. And then just by feel, make sure that we have it centered on that motor pulley. And then we should be able to take that and rotate it, and you'll see the blower wheel turn. Now we'll go ahead and put the front bulkhead in place. Now when installing the front bulkhead, we'll want to make sure that we tuck those 2 front rollers in underneath the drum. So we'll have to lift up on the drum as we're installing that. And also you'll note that there are a couple of tabs at the bottom of these top flanges, and they will fit into these uppermost rectangular holes, and that will hold that in place until we can get some screws on it. So drop the bottom right hand side in first so that it's up against the blower housing. Lift up on the drum just enough that the wheels will clear. And then lift the whole assembly up, hook those tabs in. feel around and make sure that that felt stayed in place. And you should be able to rotate the drum while holding it on the bottom of that. There, we know everything's free there now. So next we'll put the 2 bottom retaining screws in, and next we'll reposition this support, line it up with those openings, make sure the 2 tabs fit down into the slots, and then install the 2 retaining screws. Next we'll put the control panel back in position. So we'll just lay that across the top of the drum first. We'll reconnect the wire harnesses, making sure that the locking tabs engage on those. And we'll also reinstall that zip tie to hold those harnesses in place. Now, if you cut the original one, you'll need to install a new one there. We can reattach the white wire to the rear terminal on that light bulb. Make sure it fits nice and tight. And then we're ready to put the front panel on. Now, when reinstalling the front panel, we'll want to make sure that we line up these 4 fasteners, 2 on the bottom, 2 on the top, with these rectangular holes in the edge of the side panels. And they have a little hook on them, so that will hold them in place until we put the retaining screws in. At the same time, we're going to hold up on that harness so that it doesn't get jammed in the door opening. So we'll next reconnect that black wire to the light bulb and the 2-wire harness to the door switch. Make sure the locking tabs engage. You can install the 2 upper screws. Now we'll drop the control panel down into position, and you'll note that there are 3 locator tabs that line up with these rectangular holes. So make sure they're engaged, and then push it back into position, and then we'll install the 2 retaining screws on the top. Now next we'll install the 2 screws on the bottom of the front panel. And now we'll put the main top back on. Now when installing the top, we want to make sure that we line up these slotted openings with tabs across the top of the console. So sit it down about a ½ an inch back from the console and carefully slide it forward, making sure that those tabs engage. And then install the 2 retaining screws at the back. We're now ready to reconnect the power, and our repair is complete.